The president announced a new 50% tariff on.
Over time, we become too dependent on the United States as our biggest customer, with more than 90% of our steel exports going south of the border.
They use tariffs to take our businesses, not only steel, other businesses too.
We must rely more on Canadian steel for Canadian projects.
$900. That's the price tag on a ton of U.S. steel tonight. Just last week, it hovered near $700. The surge didn't stem from Wall Street, it came from a single executive order on June 4, when President Trump hiked steel and aluminum tariffs to a stunning 50%. Within hours, Canadian mills, America's closest source of metals, slammed the brakes on outbound freight. Detroit's factories felt the jolt instantly. Stamping presses stalled, robots paused, and night shift paychecks disappeared. Meanwhile, over the border, Hamilton's steel plants lit up like wartime bunkers. PM Mark Carney fired back, labeling the move a massive self-inflicted wound and slamming the door on U.S. trade. So, how did a policy meant to revive American industry leave Detroit gasping for steel? Why is Canada, a trusted ally, now rationing metal like it's a strategic asset? And who's picking up the tab when assembly lines grind to a halt? Beijing, Ottawa, or Main Street, USA? Stay with us. The unraveling began June 4, 2025, as Trump's directive hit the Federal Register before sunrise. By lunch, steel shipments to U.S. ports bore a 50% tariff, twice the 2018 figure, pushing global competitors off the board. That evening, calls flooded in from Cleveland to Monterrey. Every steel coil that cleared customs at Tuesday's rate would hemorrhage cash by Wednesday. Futures markets reflected the panic. On June 5, the very next session, Nuer bumped its base price to $900 per short ton, up nearly $150 in just 2 weeks. For auto companies, that's slow-motion sticker shock. A single pickup truck uses about a ton of steel. Multiply that across Ford's planned 1.5 million F-Series builds, and the added cost tops $500 million before the first weld. But the deeper hit came from the north. Catherine Cobden, head of Canada's Steel Producers Association, said U.S. demand basically disappeared, making sales across the border nearly impossible. That means 12 million tons, Canada's usual annual steel flow to the U.S., just vanished. So did Detroit's feedstock. PM Carney didn't mince words, he called the tariff a disaster and threatened mineral export limits if the U.S. didn't back down. As Hamilton mills ramped back up, Ford's River Rouge factory idled 2 lines due to shortages. Wall Street took notice. S&P 500 dipped 0.75% by close, a slump traders dubbed the Trump teaser. The irony is brutal. A tariff meant to protect U.S. jobs instead outsourced raw materials, froze Motor City's robots, and handed Canada control of the continent's supply routes. And this is only Act 1. On May 7, Ford CEO Jim Farley had already warned that the 50% levy would add $2.5 billion to this year's expenses, forcing a suspension of earnings guidance. Even earlier, on March 4, Reuters reported the tariff could hike prices on Mexico-built models by 25%, roughly $2,000 per midsize SUV. By the weekend, sticker shock hit showrooms. Dealerships from San Antonio to Seattle tax surcharges on import-heavy trims, while custom orders trickled to a near halt. The real blow? Jobs. By April 4, Michigan's unemployment rate hit 5.4%, the worst in the country and well above the national average of 4.1%. Analysts blamed one missing link: Canadian steel. Every F-150 assembled in Dearborn needs a ton of it. At $900 per ton, Ford burns through 6 figures of steel every 3 minutes. Multiplied across the planned run, the metal cost alone tops $1.3 billion, before wages or paint. Capitol Hill noticed. On July 21, a bipartisan Senate group visited Ottawa, begging Carney to ease what they called a metal embargo. He offered only vague talk of keeping more steel at home. The result? A tariff wall built to defend U.S. workers has cut off Detroit's oxygen supply, while Canada now steers the supply chain. Unless something changes fast, Motor City could be facing another 2008-style collapse, this time, without a bailout. Carney took Trump's tariff like a starting gun. By dawn on July 16, he unveiled a $1 billion Canadian steel overhaul fund, aimed at replacing coal-fired furnaces with electric arc and hydrogen units. Within an hour, Ottawa tightened its borders. Any steel from non-FTA nations now faces a tariff quota half last year's. Go over the cap? Get hit with a 50% penalty. Cheap imports from Brazil or Turkey just became unaffordable unless buyers accept a bigger bill than the US tariff itself. Why does it work? Ontario's grid is 93% emission-free, powered by hydro dams and nuclear plants. According to the province's IESO, that gives Hamilton furnaces a carbon footprint 3 to 4 times cleaner than the global average. That edge means Canadian steel will clear Europe's upcoming CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, by 2026, which charges high carbon imports. For ArcelorMittal Dofasco, Hamilton's biggest mill, the Modernization Fund is a golden ticket. Shovels are already down for a DRI, direct reduced iron, unit feeding 2 electric arc furnaces. The upgrade will cut 5 million tons of emissions annually and reduce production costs once gas prices stabilize. Meanwhile, Detroit waits. Every ton that once rolled south now heads to Rotterdam or Busan, stamped CBAM ready and priced beyond what US automakers can match. By the time River Rouge restarts, Canada could be fully locked into Europe's clean steel market, leaving Detroit with the bill and none of the leverage. And Alberta? It's not retaliating, it's dodging. On July 22, Alberta, Ontario, and Saskatchewan inked a pact: all new energy corridors, pipelines, roads, rail must use Ontario melted steel. That rule kicks US pipe makers off the list. Last year, Canada sent 6.56 million tons of steel to the US, over 1 million were pipe. Now, those are spoken for either staying home or heading out via non-US routes. Ottawa tightened the screws again last week, slashing the quota on tube imports from non-FTA countries by half. Go over it, and you're hit with the same 50% levy. US energy firms immediately felt it. Before the war, America got 40% of its pipe from abroad. By March 12, analysts said Canada and Mexico still supplied 16%, but prices would jump 15% this year. The damage? Texas and North Dakota drillers can't secure pipe without eating the new costs. Pipeline firms are losing $100 million contracts as Alberta insists on Canadian steel. Midwestern maintenance crews are now repurposing old stock while orders get stuck in customs limbo. There's no quick fix. New US pipe mills take years. Rail reroutes mean higher insurance and risk. Canada, meanwhile, grabs the jobs and pitches it as energy independence. With one memo and one quota cut, Ottawa turned clean energy into a pipeline power move, while US firms stare at empty ledgers. Now, Europe is watching. On January 1, 2026, the EU activates CBAM, charging foreign steel a carbon fee equal to what European mills pay. With carbon permits forecast at $88.95 per ton, imports could get hit with a $90 per ton surcharge. Canada sees a windfall. Back in February 2025, consulting firm Anthesis said Canada's low-emission steel is CBAM ready, primed to leapfrog dirtier rivals. Translation? European buyers will see Canadian coil as green-tagged and US slab as red-flagged. Every load that used to head to Michigan can now sail to Antwerp, dodge tariffs, and still sell at a premium. For US households, it's the opposite. The Tax Foundation pegs Trump's tariff suite as a $1,296 annual hit per family, a full month's groceries, gone. Detroit knows the trap: pay EU carbon tolls or eat 50% US tariffs, either way, margins vanish. And Brussels offers a carbon passport: emit less than the EU average, and your steel passes free. Canadian mills meet that bar. US mills, still 63% coal-fed, don't. So supply chains follow the cheapest path. Trump built a tariff wall to protect jobs. Brussels built a carbon gate to reroute them. And Carney just unlocked Canada's back door. Your move. Should Washington chase clean steel or double down on tariffs?